Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the Bundesliga podcast. I'm Manu. He is not Stefan Bienkowski, he is Dan Wighton. Dan, how's it going, buddy? Those who don't know you, he writes for AFP. I'm not going to try to pronounce it in French because my French is atrocious, so you can tell people what you do for AFP and what it is. But first of all, how's it going, buddy?
Good, good. Yeah, I mean, first Bundesliga weekend in the bag. It's been we had some football through the summer, but now it's really back. So that was good. I watched every match. I mean, other than obviously the
Mm.
conference, you have to pick and choose your moments on a Saturday, but otherwise watched every match. So it was good to see, and then everything from the kind of Bayern blowing everyone away in the opener to the two motor sides today. I think it was a nice mix of games across the round. So yeah,
Yeah, man.
all good.
The opener, of course, is what we want to start with. 6-0 against Leipzig. You know, we all got the usual feedback. Oh, you look, there's the two teams, and going into the season, Bayern and Leipzig are the two teams with the highest market value on our side. Take that with a grain of salt and all that. Leipzig have a ginormous squad. I think 34 players, so that skews that a little bit. But still, it's a terrible look when you have your season opener and one of the more competitive teams in the league gets absolutely bulldozed. I think this is the worst performance I've ever seen from Leipzig at the Allianz Arena. I don't know what Ole Werner's plan was at this game. I have no idea if they even played with defense. You had Louis Openda and Harvey Simmons in the starting lineup, and I'm not sure either one of them, considering what's going on with all the rumors and everything surrounding them. And Simmons obviously looks like a player who wants out, and I think that was evident in this game. The midfield three of Harvey, Schlager, and Seiwald was too porous. Lukiba in defense was terrible as well. We have to probably talk about his free kick that led to the non-goal. Then, I mean, there's so much. I mean, as brilliant as Bayern were, this was maybe the worst performance I've ever seen of Leipzig in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, we've gone from generally the kickoff to the season is the defending champion away at um, a historical club or a rival or something like that. Usually, that can mean that it's a bit of a tough opener for the
Mm,
defending champ. In this case, Bayern's at home, and they're taking on, a Leipzig side that I think I they've been a bit quiet. Like they've been really busy in the off season, but they've also been quiet about it. It hasn't. When you actually look at the transfer incomings, there's a lot of guys in that kind of 19, 20-year-old age bracket who come in for
mm,
about 20 million. And I actually thought this could be a decent season. And Ole Werner has done a great job at Kiel and then over at Bremen for so long. I think really, probably Bremen are going to have a really tough season this year, and we'll see how valuable Ole Werner was. But but yeah, it was just a complete annihilation. I, you know, uh, you just it just never, kind of stop. He's already dead, kind of thing. At some point, you thought this was just too much. Um, One thing, I guess, uh, if you are a Leipzig fan, you might the straw you might grasp at is that expected goals was about
yeah.
1.5, 1.6 for Bayern. So it just showed that they had a really great night, which can happen sometimes. Um, when you have that starting 11 is really world class. I think that if they can keep that team fit, Bayern will do really well this year. For Leipzig, uh, yeah, it shows the scale of the task.
Mm,
Betting in these new guys. Bukeba was a great example of a really talented guy. He had a bad game all around. The midfield, yeah, I mean, Simmons, maybe he's already halfway out
yeah.
the door. That was kind of one of those things where it seemed like it was going to be a done deal. From my point of view, wanting a competitive Bundesliga, I kind of felt that considering Bayern's depth issues, the problems at Dortmund and at Leverkusen. Like if Leipzig could have held on to both Sesko and Simmons, this could have been, a year for them to really challenge. But I mean, to even just mentally to get back after a 6-0 thrashing on the opening day of the season, that's going to be a challenge, and it's probably earlier than Oli Werner thought to be thrown into the fire. This is really an early test for him. A guy who has done well everywhere he's been, but hasn't been at the club when the expectations are as high.
What do you make of the fact that pretty much right after the game, Jurgen Klopp, who's based in Munich, right, has to go up to Leipzig to put out the fires and speak to the press? I put this jokingly on social media saying, how long until he's sitting in Oli Werner's chair? But that's quick, like 90 minutes into the season, and Jurgen Klopp is already back in Leipzig at Kotterweg, putting out fires.
Yeah, they had a crisis meeting, not on Saturday morning, but that night when they returned. Bill wrote about it, and the Jurgen Klopp flew in, presumably from Munich or from Mallorca, maybe
he looks tan, so Mallorca it is.
In the red well, I think we're all trying to still work out what exactly it is that Jurgen Klopp does. Midweek last week, we both were in the interview with Bakayoko, and he spoke about how Klopp played a crucial role in convincing him to come to the club. And so when you see that kind of thing, you realize, okay, recruitment is probably a role he can play quite well. He's a big name. Players really know him, and he can try to get people to the club. But now he was apparently very, very hot on the Oli Werner appointment. So now you have to, he's got to see it through. And maybe the only way for him to save face would be to appeal on the sideline. He keeps talking about how he'll never do it. And I think especially at Leipzig, I would have found it unlikely, but it's, I don't know exactly what would have been said. David Raum was really clear after the game, talking about a lack of desire, a lack of motivation, a lack of willingness to fight, which would explain the performance. These are, it's hard to find a more talented team than Leipzig, maybe other than Munich or, a handful of players at other clubs. But this is a really talented bunch of players.
But talent was never an issue there, right? Like last year already, and it feels like maybe the fact that Simmons is still there, and I've been talking to people at the club about the issues that he's caused in the dressing room and all that. Sometimes you just have to cut the cancer out for the body to survive, and you almost wonder if this is so untenable now that you just need to find a solution to move on.
Yeah, perhaps it is a distraction. Again, when we spoke to Bakayoko last week, he talked about how Xavi Simons is a guy who's always had transfer speculation linked around him his whole career. He's kind of this wonder kid who came through at Barcelona and went to Paris and hasn't really delivered on all of the promise that we think that he has. But if your contacts are telling you that he's making an impact on the dressing room, then perhaps the best solution for everyone is to get.
Same with Openda. I heard that as well, but you're right. We both sat in with Bakayoko on that round table, and he gave this impression that this is the most normal thing in the world, right? Like that you're linked. And he himself went through it at PSV, although when you look at his stats last year when he was surrounded by the most transfer rumors, his stats weren't the best either. So they're saying it's not impacting them, but how believable is that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think this is also, we see this time and again that clubs go down to the Allianz, and there are better atmospheres in the Bundesliga, better stadium atmospheres, but good teams just get picked apart. It happened to Dortmund a decade on end, and it's happened kind of regularly in each season whenever a challenger comes along. So I think the consequence of Leipzig wanting to attack, wanting to play the game they like to play, and being picked apart, it shows that they're not ready yet. Whether that's some of the want-away big stars, I don't know, but yeah, perhaps it was. It seems to be kind of everything that could go well went well for Bayern, and the opposite for Leipzig. I mean, that goal that was taken away, I've never seen something like that in football. It just seemed like one of those, when you're having a bad day, and then the final little straw that breaks the camel's back is when you think, okay, you've pulled back a goal. Nusa, another promising young star, looks to have scored, and it's taken away for. And rightly, if the ball was moving, it can't be moving, but it just felt like, oh my goodness, how a bad day.
Yeah, that was a baffling moment, a real lapse in concentration there. What did you make of the Bayern performance? I mean, they were perfect.
They were great. I think the criticism for Bayern for the season has been around depth, and this is a club who are well financed. It's a little strange that they have, I think it's 18 players in the squad at the moment. You just mentioned that there's 34 at Leipzig, so it's a little uneven in that sense. And then in some, particularly up front, there's a real lack of depth. I mean, there's Musiala's already out, but if something happened to Kane, there's just not a lot of quality that can come in. Having said that, if you can keep this team strong and healthy, then sky's the limit.
Well, we'll talk about that. We have Matt now joining us from Borussia Park. So Dan, I apologize. We're going to change our schedule a little bit and start with the Sunday game next, since you're there, Matt, and I don't know how much longer we're going to have you. Matt, you're at Borussia Park. We just finished up the Friday evening game. Talked about Leipzig and all their issues, and of course Bayern's brilliance. Before we talk about where you at, what did you make of Bayern Munich?
Yeah,
perfect.
I was great. Okay? So, I was at the Allianz Arena on Friday night, and I think the takeaway is that Bayern's first 11, despite all the issues around the club and all the potentially unsuccessful transfer strategy, missed out transfer targets, the first 11 is fine. I think that's clear to see. How that will then play out over the course of the season, with Champions League, with the relevant things, awards, and how the club will deal with that, I think time will tell. I don't think I can really glean too much from the performance on Friday night. But yeah, obviously a good start for Bayern. And as for RB, obviously, it's a game for them to forget, but I think it raises serious questions. I don't know if you've already maybe touched on this, but I think it raises questions from top to bottom. In terms of the transfer strategy, they've brought in a raft of new players. It's a relatively offensive-looking team, but then again, they've also brought in a rather conservative coach in Werner to take control of that. So how that's going to work, I don't know. Obviously, it didn't work at all on Friday night. And then above all that, there's the overlying question as to what exactly Jurgen Klopp's role is in all this, or what it's going to be increasingly. And is there a scenario which we end up seeing Jurgen Klopp taking a more hands-on role? I don't want to.
I just mentioned that
firing line immediately.
Matt, I just mentioned how long until he's on the coaching side himself.
They were my impression. Obviously, perfect start for Bayern, but there will be bigger tests to come, both in the Bundesliga and more important than Champions League.
As we have you here now, we were going to Dan and I will touch on the Saturday games, because I know you only have a few minutes until you duty calls again. So I want to touch on HSV start in the Bundesliga. Finally back, thank God. I'm so glad Hamburg HSV are back in the league. And they should have probably won this game if a certain someone had left Yusuf Poulsen's header alone. then there would have been a 1-0 win. Yeah. I actually, I didn't catch the full game. I caught the last 30 minutes or so, in which HSV were clearly the better team. I'm not sure about the first 60 minutes, so you can fill me in there. What were your impressions of Hamburg's return to the Bundesliga?
Yeah, no, you're right. You tuned in for Hamburg's best 15-20 minutes. And we'll get onto that in a sec, but I think very much a result of melding policy and substitutions between the sort of 65th and 70th minute. He brought on some significant quality and experience in Ryan Philippe from we were brought in from Braunschweig. Jean-Luc Dompe, so there's been a bit of a fixture for them in the second division. And of course, Yusuf Paulsen, who needs no introduction from his 400 plus appearances for RB Leipzig over the years. And that, like you said, absolutely brought about Hamburg's best part of the game. I think I saw a stat that I think in the final 15 minutes they had 60% possession and 4 shots on goal, in comparison to Gladbach's 40% and 0 shots, which does not say a great deal about Borussia Mönchengladbach, given that that's while Hamburg have been messing around in Division 2 and turning into an absolutely stereotypical Bundesliga 2 side for the past 7 years, Gladbach have been mid-table in the Bundesliga, so it doesn't say much to them. Before that, it was very much a game which I think Merlin Potzin at HSV and other people around HSV had predicted it would be. The sort of HSV performance that we thought would come is completely different to the HSV that we've seen over the past 7 years in the Zweite Bundesliga. It had to be different. No one's made any bones out of that. HSV had gone from being a big fish in a relatively small pond to being, well, a big fish still,
massive
but
pond
in a pond full of in a pond full of other big fish. So the approach we have to change. We were promised that there was going to be a move away from the possession football that we've seen Harsdale playing, to a more counter-attacking style in the Bundesliga, which I think is absolutely legitimate. A little bit to go about it. But of course, as a result of all that, as a result of that change of strategy, they've also swapped out half the team. There's 7 or 8 new faces in this Hausfall lineup, and it's going to take a while to. The new faces are going to take a while to settle in. The new system is going to take a while to settle in. Merlin Potzin, still only 34 years old. It was first season of the Bundesliga. He really took over in November last year, so we've not even had a year as a head coach yet. So there is so much new about this Hamburg team. They might be a huge club. They might be a huge name. They might have brought 5,000-6,000 supporters to Gladbach here today. That's all true, and you're right. I agree. I think it's great to have Hamburg back in the Bundesliga. So it was a massive enrichment for the league. But when it comes to the football, HSV are a Division 2 team in every sense. So there's going to have to be patience on that front. Their pre-season wasn't ideal, although Merlin Potzin has just described the pre-season as really, really good. In terms of results, they lost 5 pre-season games by a combined score of 14-2. I think I'm correct in saying. In their defence, they picked high-level teams. I think Olympique Lyon were involved, Sturm Graz, Copenhagen, who have a quite long-running fan friendship with Hamburg. Not SC Lons. That was RB Leipzig, wasn't it? Mallorca. They played Mallorca. So these are all pretty, top level teams, and these teams were chosen specifically by the HSV staff in order to get this new team, used to playing against top tier, partially European level opposition, because that's what we're going to be facing here. Gladbach, as we know, are not quite European standard opposition, but they are absolutely solid Bundesliga opposition, and perhaps in many ways a favourable team to start against for Hamburg. They did sit deep for a long time, HSV. They left Gladbach to have possession. I think that was expected. Gladbach were toothless, really, really toothless. I can think of 2 particular saves from Daniel Hoyer Fernandez in the Hamburg goal, one from Frank Onelrath, I think it was in the first half, where Hoyer Fernandez was saved really well with his legs. In the second half, he's parried a shot from the right around the post. But I must admit, I can't really think of too many big chances to add to that. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of possession. There's one moment, I can't remember the 3 defenders it was, but 3 Hamburg defenders threw themselves in front of a shot at one point in the second half. That was about the most desperate it got. But yeah, really, really solid performance on balance. Defended well. They had options up front, and like I said, when it got to the 60th, 70th minute, that sort of period, when the Gladbach pressure was really, really building, I thought Merlin Potzin reacted perfectly by bringing on Dompe, Poulsen, and Philippe you have immense experience and genuine quality, I think, in those three. And it showed in the final 20 minutes that you saw. And who knows? I've not seen the replay, but I've heard a few people saying that if he hadn't touched it at the back post, I don't know, would it have gone in? Anyway,
what do you think, Dan? I think
it
would have gone in, right?
It looked like it was. I mean, it really looked like it was. It's one of those things that must, be the absolute coach killer when a ball is slow motion heading goalwards and someone runs in. Of course, at that point you're playing on pure instinct. So, my career never went too far, so I shouldn't be telling people what to do. But in slow motion, anyway, it looked like it was heading goalwards. I think for Hamburg, I mean, the issue, even when they were circling the drain for so long before they eventually got relegated, it's not about the quality. They have some incredible players. You look at the list that they had in that time and also in the second division. It's just about the ability to be a little bit pragmatic. They're not a pragmatic side. I remember doing a feature. I went up to Hamburg last year and met people critical of HSV and fans of HSV, both of which said the exact same thing, which is like, we don't belong here. We're better than this, and we're gonna, but really, if you're going to get out of the second division, you have to eat grass, you have to fight, you have to throw three bodies in front of a shot like we saw that you mentioned there. And if Merlin, it's always weird to see coaches younger than you doing well. Personally,
he's 1 month older than me, so I'm just about okay.
Yeah, I won't go into it, but he's a young fella compared to me. But if he can be pragmatic, if he can think, okay, you know what, we're going to do counter-attacking football because we need to. They have the infrastructure, they have the ceiling to really be a mid-table club. And then on the whole balance of the weekend and what we saw today, like Cologne looked strong again. They're playing against 10 men for much of the game. Hamburg looked good enough. It looks like from what we saw on Saturday, there's a fair few clubs that look to be in more danger than the promoted sides.
I think the interesting thing that Dan talks about there is the mentality around Hamburg. He's right to say that there was a mentality when they went down, they were too big to go down. And I think that even persevered a few years in the second division, even as they were finishing consistently fourth and missing out on the promotion. That, it must be said, I think has changed. I think HSV do genuinely come back to the Bundesliga now as a different club with different mentality. I think those 7 years have taken their toll. I think we see that in some of the pessimism surrounding Hamburg. I mean, they had a great promotion party when they went up. That was fantastic. And just thousands of people turned up in town. Great, but I think the people in charge have been they've been so clear as to what the situation is. I think it's been accepted by the fan base generally. So there is some pessimism. It's a brand new team. Some Hamburg fans that I've spoken to are very much of the opinion to stay up, do whatever we can to stay up. And that includes even next week's derby against St. Pauli. It's going to be a strange one in that, by many measures, HSV, of course, a much bigger club, much bigger fan base, much more spectacular history. All those things are true. But at the moment, St. Pauli are a more experienced Bundesliga team. And we saw any team that can come from behind twice against Borussia Dortmund, as they did yesterday. That's going to pose a significant challenge for HSV. But like I said, no one's under any illusions. Hamburg, the mentality has changed. I think they can accept that now. And they're in even financially, they're in a much more stable situation. I think this summer they recorded a profit for the fourth year in a row. It's no longer a club which is completely reliant on support from Klaus Michel Kühne from Hamburg. They've just elected a new president. They're also similar age to myself and Merlin Portesini. He's a former Ultra, former capo of the Ultras in Hamburg. I know. This is Manu, your football world. You belong with Uli Hoeneß.
It is a new
it's
world.
A new world now. But yeah, it's a new Hamburg, a new Hamburg SV on so many levels. But
Matt, how much longer do we have you until you have to run?
Not long. I'm going to go finish off my piece, and then I'm going to jump on the train. and probably spend about 4
I
hours
give you
covering the
30 seconds on
50
Gladbach.
miles
What do you
back to
think?
below. um, I say this quietly because
See if the Gestapo is here first.
I don't think a lot of
Yeah.
Dorado say a while now. Gladbach have been in transition for about 4 years now. I think in Liverpool Rights and Frank on the right, they have two exciting players there. But I think we saw today, despite a lot of possession, again, the really throughout the team, this has been bundled together. They actually didn't really create very much at all. Florian Neuhaus came on in the second half. That's an interesting story in itself. Anyone's followed the story of the summer when Florian was caught on camera during some sort of party in Mallorca. Sorry, Dan?
What did the crowd say when he came on? Did he get a warm reception?
Nothing notable.
That's because they all agree.
Neither huge boos. Again, I'm just going to be careful in who's listening. But the way he talked about the sporting director Roland Ferkus, while after having 2 or 3 fish bowls in Mallorca, was probably not the way to go. I don't know what that says about the general, the respect for the hierarchy and the sort of atmosphere which is currently in place there with Borussia Mönchengladbach. Again, a huge club, in terms of the size that you would put alongside Hamburg, but very much stuck in the mid-table for years. And there were boos at full time tonight because ultimately they have higher ambitions than being held to a 0-0 draw by a new.
Well, Matt, before we get you arrested here or banned from Borussia Park forever, thank you for jumping on. And I think your piece will probably be out before this podcast. So if you haven't read it by the time this podcast comes out, read that first. So, all right, Matt.
Thank you, lads.
Cheers.
Ciao.
Bye. Well, there's Matt Ford. If we never see him again, it's because the owner got him. I think that sums up the Sunday fixture really well, Dan. I don't know if you need to add anything to it. I wanted to touch on the 2 big games there was 3 big games, but only 2 of them kind of surprised me. Frankfurt demolishing Bremen. I don't think there's a big surprise in that. I think Frankfurt is actually one of the sides that could actually be dangerous to Bayern Munich. That performance underlines it, and Bremen, of course, showing all the deficits that we all expected. Leverkusen Hoffenheim. I had Leverkusen as my flop of the season in the preview, and I didn't think it would be match day 1 where this would become true. It was shocking at times. I don't know what your thoughts were on this game.
I just thought if you want a game to get yourself up and running, then against Hoffenheim, who just looked rubbish last year, have looked rubbish for a few years, I would have thought that would be a perfect. They lost a few players in the off season as well. I thought it was a perfect at home, great way to start for Ten Hag, but apparently not. And they didn't. I mean, it's weird to talk about them and even compare them to the team that finished second last year, because you could count on one hand the amount of players who are still in the starting 11. There was 3 newcomers in the starting 11, and then all of the important kind of ones who drove that team on have pretty much left. And I was covering the match with a colleague, and then at one point the commentator said, "Oh, it's about time for Leverkusen, the thing for the last couple of years." And the team's changed so much that I think I hadn't even thought of that as a possibility. Leverkusen, that's the idea of Florian Wirtz or Granit Xhaka popping up with something late, Jeremy Frimpong cruising down the sideline like that. It seems so far away. So, I mean, Ten Hag was pretty clear. He said that this shows us the scale of the task we have, and there's a lot of new players. This is to be able to knit them all together will take time. One thing that was funny that Ten Hag said is that he said, "I'm not Harry Potter. I don't have the magic. No, he said no one has the magic to be successful and build the team together from the start. It's true, and expectations, I think, have to be realistic. But the one guy who did that is the guy who had the job just before him. I mean, Alonso managed to come in and he was Harry Potter. He was able to weave his magic immediately with that club, and making all of those players. I think there was 9 players in his first full season who made their national team debuts for a variety of different countries. So Alonso was able to do it. He's a special guy. I don't think anyone, even the most passionate Leverkusen fan, will expect a repeat of that, at least immediately. It's kind of a surprise by how much money they've spent on players. Thinking about only really Bayern spend that kind of money on new players, a lot of young guys. But in this bracket of about 25, it's Dortmund tend to go for a guy who's younger. Leipzig tend to go for a guy who's younger. The success that Leverkusen had 2 years ago was because they were able to bring together some exciting young guys with some real experienced, cool heads. And so, I guess the one thing I would say if I was a Leverkusen fan, or say 2 Leverkusen fans, is that Ten Hag has a really good record with young players. Even at United, where things didn't go that well, he did bring through some young guys. Did that at Ajax, with the Bayern Munich second team that he ran as well. So that's positive. I think that's why Leverkusen have brought him in. But I think after the highs of the last couple of years, it might be a long season.
I was saying the talent is there to maybe be successful next year, but I don't know if it's going to be this year. And the turnover is so big.
Yeah, but for sure. But I think unless they're in a relegation scrap, I think they'll give him time. They are, as a consequence of being a club of their size, if it's a Dortmund or a Bayern looking like they're not going to make the Champions League, it's a disaster, and then they'll take drastic steps. But I think they'll give Ten Hag time at Leverkusen. And I think the other thing to remind the listeners, and I assume some of them aren't in Germany, but Ten Hag was seen as, he's still got a really good reputation in Germany. He was seen as quite a good get for Leverkusen, that they got him. It's someone that they probably wouldn't have got a few years ago. So I think he has the capital to be given some time with that team. It'll be interesting to see if things start going, chief, if things keep going worse, to see how the media reacts to that. There's a lot more interest in him because of the Manchester United time. So we'll see about that. But I think
I think so too. And I mean, there's so much noise still around the club too. Piero Hincapié was seen in tears after the game. Supposedly he might be off. There's interest from Arsenal and Chelsea, right? Then you have the whole situation with Victor Boniface, who failed his medical, and this is after a 70 million euro January move to Saudi Arabia fell through. Now he failed his medical in Milan, which makes you wonder what happened. If that was maybe the real reason why the Saudi club went to Duran instead of Boniface. And now he's coming back and has to be reintegrated. That is complicated, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, they look to have, as they did in January, they look to be willing to part with him. When he's fit, he's really, really good. Yeah. I mean, he's a guy who I interviewed him one-on-one a year ago, and he just seems so, I asked him if he was nervous taking the penalty to put them 1-0 up when they beat Bremen to win the title. He looked at me like, what a dumb question. Why would I be nervous? He's so, he's just, it looks like he's playing with his friends. And you get him in that frame of mind. He's a great player. I'm not sure about the medical stuff. I know he's had a couple of ACL reconstructions, which is always tough for a player. But yeah, it just seems like it's a fire sale. I don't know if you've ever seen. I'm trying to think of anything like this I've ever seen. Like when there's like 8 or 9 first team players that have been sold
willingly
in one,
like by design.
Willingly, yeah. It doesn't seem like. I mean, even I guess that's the relationship they have with the players. But someone like Xhaka, who you would think, he's a experienced one to guide the younger guys, but Sunderland came along with about as much money as Leverkusen paid for him, and they let him go. So maybe there's more to that, but it seems like they basically said, if anyone wants to go, you're welcome to go. We get money for you, and we're going to start afresh. Yeah. We're shaking up the Etch a Sketch again, and we're going with it all over again. Which, I mean, it worked for them a couple of years ago, but it's a huge transition. I mentioned that when we saw each other last week, but it was really funny to me when Leverkusen launched their jersey. It would have been about 6 weeks ago. New partnership with New Balance. It's a huge thing for the club. They launched their jersey, and it was like normally you have the big stars in there. You've got, but they basically, I think they had Palacios was the one who came out, and you thought at that time you had Xhaka still at the club, you had all these players still there, but it was clear that they thought, well, there's one guy that we might want to hold on to,
and he might be going now too.
Well, because what is it, a 65 million euro release clause? And the idea, I guess, was they were like, well, no one's going to pay that. It's a huge amount of money. We'll put him in the shirt. But yeah, it's a tough one. They were expecting it to be big, I suppose, is the conclusion you draw from that. But that's a really, especially Leverkusen, they have a really interesting makeup. They've got players from Africa, players from South America. They have a real mix. There's a lot of the German teams have kind of a German core with players from elsewhere, and you imagine that's quite hard in the dressing room to weave everyone in together. Alonso did that incredibly well. Leverkusen have done that well, but you're starting all over again now. So I think one thing that excites me a little bit as a Bundesliga fan, as a Bundesliga journalist, is that they're willing to go out there and spend money on a player who's not just a prospect, but who's in his prime. Like Loic Bad, the French defender who arrived on Friday, I think it was. This is a guy who could be the future centre-back of France. He's 25. They paid 30 million for him. These kind of things, I think, makes you optimistic, because so many Bundesliga clubs just shop at the really young end of the spectrum. But
I think it will take time too. Let's go on to the other disappointment. That's Borussia Dortmund. 3-1 up against St. Pauli. I thought they were brilliant. Julian Brandt scores an absolute world-class goal. The way he takes that down in stride and then finishes it. And I was thinking, like, okay, well, there's Dortmund off and going. And I still think that they are the team to challenge Bayern alongside Frankfurt. I said this in the previous show. Frankfurt have done exactly what I thought they would do. Dortmund, I thought they were going to do what I thought they would do, and then they did what Dortmund always do and disappointed. But it all started with that Filippo Mani red card. I know this is the new interpretation of the laws of the game, that they want to punish two-handed jersey grabs a little bit harsher, and so the call is correct. I am curious to see if they're going to be able to drive this lines throughout the entire season, because I said this on social media. Like, if you are setting the standard here for this to be a penalty and a red card, we're going to have a lot of those then, because this is a pretty normal play. And I'm not sure CC would have scored either way. The interpretation of the law is that that Mani took away a scoring chance, and I feel bad for him, because I think he's a talented centre-back, obviously very young, U21 national team player for Italy. It will need his time. But it kind of unraveled, right? Sinani scores the penalty, and then Smith with a brilliant goal to make it 3-3. And then Dortmund tried, but, a man down, that was just a bit too much, especially at a Milan tour that was just going crazy. I thought until that moment, that red card, Dortmund were in full control. And it was Niko Kovac goal football at its finest, and they were in full control. It's not pretty to watch, and we get to talk about Bellingham and his father and all that sort of stuff in a moment. I think you probably want to touch on that. But, I thought they were on their way, and until they weren't.
Yeah. From a practical perspective, I had to tear up my match report, which is always frustrating. From a spiritual perspective, I was like, it's the same old Dortmund again. That's just what they do. This is what happens. And, Julian Brandt is probably the perfect example of the guy who summarizes or distills that pure nature. I mean, that goal he scored was like, you think, where have you been for the last, this is a guy who occasionally will produce these moments and you're like, this is of incredible skill. And then we'll have a long period of time when he doesn't look like he's fit for the first team. So it just seemed to be absolutely the most Dortmund thing ever. I really thought at least now they're 2 goals up when it was 3-1 up. Even when the red card came down, I thought, okay, I mean, they should be able to manage this out. They should be able to, but then they basically had one centre back in the entire defence. They have one centre back for the next match because Mane will miss out.
Someone's coming.
Schlotterbeck and
Chelsea, new defender from Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean, again, but this guy's what's his Aaron? I
me too.
read about it today, but he's 20, right? He's 20, and he hasn't really played in Europe. And Mane was on debut, his Bundesliga debut for the club, and he clearly was trying to do the right thing and gave away a penalty. So it is one of those things where, okay, someone's coming, but it's now you have a situation where you've got to play at home against Union Berlin with one centre back who's had experience, and I mean, maybe give this guy a debut. I don't know. Anyway, it's it just is clearly when things go bad for Dortmund, they go terrible, and that's what happened yesterday. And then you have all of the off-field stuff with Mark Bellingham, which I wasn't at the game. I'd like to do a Saturday night game in Hamburg if I can, but I wasn't there. But if he thinks he's allowed to walk into the dressing room area, I think he was in the tunnel outside the dressing room, and take on, confront, I think was the word that the German press used, confront Sebastian Kehl, the sporting director, about hooking his son at halftime. I mean, that's a really strange kind of level of entitlement from this guy. I mean, he's his agent as well, but it still doesn't make it any better. As well, this is his first Bundesliga game for Joe Bellingham. So, I can imagine there being difficult conversations after 10 games if he's playing off the bench. Yeah. Fair enough, but he hooked him at halftime. The guy who replaced him was Julian Brandt, and he had a really great second half. So that's a sign that things are a little rocky, and you hope that they can right the ship. I mean, I'm as I'm very pessimistic when it comes to Dortmund. I like that you said that maybe they'll have a go this year. I've been hurt too many times. For the record,
that's Stefan's take.
I mean, if they can play like they did at the end of last season. But what you need, if you are Dortmund, basically, if you're a Dortmund coach, you need to somehow adjust the table inside the dressing room, which makes it look like fourth place is first place is actually fourth place. Because whenever Dortmund need to get to that fourth place, they play like an incredible team. We've seen it several times in the last few seasons. If they've got a chance of making it to first place, then they mess it up. So, I mean, speaking as a pessimistic Dortmund fan, I suppose, but I just think this was an example of, and now there'll be some late additions, and maybe they'll gel, and maybe they won't. And you've got 3 centre backs or 2.5 centre backs with Emre Can, who are coming back. So I understand you don't want to go out there and spend money on one, but I think every Dortmund fan has seen that game yesterday before 20 times in the last couple of
seasons. I think that is a really good summary, Dan. I don't think I have much to add. So, and I'm also conscious of your time. I know you have to run, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. We'll be back later this week with our usual slate of podcasts, and Stefan should be back from his holiday from Switzerland as well. So, keep your eye peeled for that. Great first match day. I'm excited to have it back, and I'm looking forward to next week. And then, of course, we have an international break. So, lots to come. Dan, thank you so much for doing this, and I'll talk to you soon, my friend. And for everyone else, until next time, auf Wiedersehen.